Hi kids, welcome back. This is the conclusion of book 1 to the story of Little Women. It is broke in 2 parts, 2 separate books. The second book is when you're grown up and in your grown up life. So if you're loving the story and you want to finish it, you can go to the library and get book 2, or you can find it at Barnes & Noble. You can order it on Amazon.com, or you can find it in Ollie's Bargain Outlet where I found this one. But the best bet is probably the library. This is a classic story. I'm sure they have it in any library around the world. If your library isn't open, I'm sure you can find it for cheap on Amazon. Okay, so this is chapters 16 through 19, and the conclusion of part 1 when they're kids. It is a little bit sad, so I'm preparing myself, but it has been a pretty tough year as far as illness goes, and what a better story to read. This is the best story we could read for 2020 and the best way to end it. This is a remarkable book. The second half does get happier and more jolly, but here we go. Are you ready? Chapter 16 is called Dark Days. Beth was much sicker than anyone imagined. Meg stayed at home so she would not infect the King children. She felt guilty when she wrote letters to Washington and did not tell anything about Beth's illness. Jo devoted herself to Beth day and night. It was not a hard task, for Beth was a sweet and tender patient. But there came a time during the fever when she began to talk in hoarse, broken voice. She played on the bed cover as if it were her beloved little piano. She did not know the familiar faces around her, but called them by wrong names. She also called for her mother. Jo grew frightened. Meg begged to write the truth. A letter from Washington added to their trouble. Mr. March had grown sicker and could not come home for a long while. The days seemed dark now. The sisters were sad and lonely as they worked and waited while the shadow of death hovered. Meg often sat alone with tears dropping on her work. She thought about how rich she had been and things more precious than anything money could buy: love, peace, and health. These are the real blessings of life. Living in the darkened room, Jo learned to see the beauty and sweetness of Beth's nature. She felt how deep and tender a place she filled in all their hearts. She realized the worth of Beth's goal to live for others and make home happy. And Amy longed to be at home. She felt that no work would be troublesome. She grew sad as she remembered how many tasks Beth's loving hands had done for her. Lori haunted the house like a restless ghost. Mr. Lawrence sadly locked the grand piano. Everyone missed Beth. The milkman, the baker, grocer, and butcher asked how she did. Neighbors sent all sorts of comforts and good wishes. There's Charlotte and Meg writing letters to her mom. Even the sisters were surprised to find how many friends Beth had made. Mr. Baggs came twice a day. Hannah sat up at night. Meg kept a telegram in her desk ready to send off at any minute, and Jo never stirred from Beth's side. The 1st of December, a bitter wind blew. Snow fell fast, and the year seemed getting ready for its death. When Mr. Baggs came that morning, he looked long at Beth. He held her hot hand in his own, and then laid it gently down. "If Miss March can leave her husband, she'd better be sent for," he said in a low voice. Meg dropped down into a chair. Jo ran to the parlor, snatched up the telegram, and rushed out into the storm. After Jo returned, Lori came in with a letter from the post saying that Mr. March was mending again. Jo's face was full of misery that Lori asked quickly, "Is Beth worse?" "I've sent to Mother," said Jo. "Oh, Jo, it's not so bad as that," cried Lori. "Yes, it is. She doesn't know who we are. She doesn't look like my Beth, and there's nobody to help us bear it." "Oh, no. Beth's getting sicker and sicker." Poor Beth. As the tears streamed down poor Jo's cheeks, she stretched out her hand. Lori took it in his, whispering as well as he could with a lump in his throat, "I'm here. Hold on to me, Jo, dear." The warm gas of his hand comforted Jo's sore heart. She cried miserably, and Roy drew his hand across his eyes. As Joe's sobs quieted, he said hopefully, "I don't think she will die. She's so good, and we all love her so much. I don't believe God will take her away yet." "The good and the dear people always do die," groaned Joe. But she stopped crying, for her friend's words cheered her up in spite of her own doubts and fears. "Poor girl, you're worn out. I'll hearten you in a jiffy. Tonight I'll give you something that will warm your heart," said Laurie, beaming at her. "What is it?" cried Joe. "I secretly telegraphed your mother yesterday, and Brooke answered she'd come at once. She'll be here tonight, and everything will be all right. The late train is at 2 in the morning." Laurie spoke very fast and turned red and excited. Joe grew quite white and threw her arms around his neck, crying, "Oh, Laurie, I'm so glad." Laurie was comforting Joe. So he went ahead and sent for the mother, despite them telling him not to, which actually worked out, right? Everyone rejoiced but Beth. She lay in a deep sleep. She woke only now and then to mutter, "Water." All day Joe and Meg hovered over her, and all day the snow fell. The bitter wind raged, and the hours dragged slowly by. Night came at last. The doctor had said that some change, for better or worse, would probably take place around midnight. Hannah lay down on the sofa. Mr. Lawrence paced in the parlor. Laurie lay on the rug, staring into the fire. The clock struck 12, and Meg and Joe saw a change pass over Beth's face. An hour went by, and nothing happened, except Laurie's quiet departure for the station. Another hour, still no one came. Fears of delay in the storm or accidents, or worst of all, a great grief in Washington, haunted the girls. It was past 2 when Joe heard a movement by the bed. Turning quickly, she saw Meg kneeling before the mother's chair with her face hidden. A dreadful fear passed coldly over Joe as she thought, "Beth is dead, and Meg is afraid to tell me." A great change seemed to have taken place. The fever flush and the look of pain were gone, and the beloved little face looked peaceful. Poor Beth. Always the good ones. Leaning well over her dearest sister Joe kissed the damp forehead. She whispered softly, "Goodbye, my Beth, goodbye." Hannah hurried to the bed. She looked at Beth, felt her hands, and listened at her lips. Then she exclaimed, "The fever's turned. Her skin's damp and she breathes easily. Please be given." "Yes, my dears, I think the little girl will pull through this time," said the doctor when he came. "Listen," cried Joe, jumping to her feet. Yes, there was the sound of carriage bells at the door below, a cry from Hannah, and then Laurie's voice saying in a joyful whisper, "Girls, she's come! She's come!" Maybe she'll get better. Chapter 17, A Mother's Touch. Words cannot describe the meeting of mother and daughters. The house filled with happiness. When both woke, the first thing she saw was her mother's face. She smiled and nestled close in the loving arms about her. Then she slept again. The girls waited upon their mother, for she was not unclasped the thin hand that clung to hers, even in sleep. Hannah served an astonishing breakfast, and Meg and Joe fed their mother like young storks. They listened to her whispered account of father's health and Mr. Brooks' promise to stay with him. She told of the delays caused by the storm on the journey home, and the comfort Laurie's face had given her when she arrived at the station. What a strange yet pleasant day that was, so brilliant and happy outside, for everyone seemed to be out welcoming the first snow, so quiet and restful inside, for everyone slept, and there was a stillness throughout the house. Miss March would not leave Beth's side. She rested in the big chair, waking often to look at and touch her child. Laurie, meanwhile, set off for Aunt March's house to comfort Amy. Aunt March and Amy both had tears in their eyes when they had heard the good news. By then, Laurie was tired from his long night, so Amy persuaded him to rest on the sofa. Laurie was wakened later by Amy's cry of joy at the sight of her mother. There probably were a good many happy little girls in the city that day, but Amy was the happiest of all. She sat in her mother's lap and told her of her adventures with Aunt March and her pet parrot. Marmee saw something on Amy's hand that made her smile. Amy said gravely, "Aunt gave me this turquoise ring today. She called me to her and kissed me and put it on my finger and said I was a credit to her. I'd like to wear it, Mother. Can I?" That's Marmee tending to a sick little bat. "It's very pretty, but I think you're a little too young for such decorations, Amy," said Miss March. She looked down at the plump little hand with the band of sky blue stones on the finger. "I don't like it only because it's so pretty," said Amy. "I want to wear it to remind me of something, Beth. Beth isn't selfish, and that's the reason everyone loves her. I'm going to try to be like Beth all I can. If I had something always around me to remind me, I would do better. May we try this way? Wear your ring, dear, and do your best. I think you will succeed, for the sincere wish to be good is half the battle. Now I must go back to Beth. Keep up your heart, little daughter, and we will have you home soon again." That evening, Joe slipped upstairs into Beth's room. Marmee was in her usual place by the bed. Joe stood a minute, twisting her fingers in her hair with a worried look. "What is it, dearie?" asked Miss March, holding out her hand. "I want to tell you something, Mother. Last summer, Meg left a pair of gloves of the Lawrences, and only one was returned. Now Laurie has told me that Mr. Brooke keeps it as a reminder of Meg. He said Mr. Brooke liked Meg but didn't dare say so, since she was so young and he was so poor. Now isn't it a dreadful state of things?" "Do you think Meg cares for him?" asked Miss March. "Talking about the gloves." And there's the little turquoise ring. "Mercy me, I don't know anything about love and such nonsense," cried Joe. "In novels, girls blush, faint away, grow thin, and act like fools. But Meg looks so calm when I talk about that man." Then you fancy that Meg is not interested in John?" "Who?" cried Joe. "Mr. Brooke. I call him John now." "Oh dear, now I know you'll take his part. He's been good to father, and you let Meg marry him." And Joe pulled her hair again angrily. "My dear, don't get angry. I will tell you how it happened. John was so devoted to father that we couldn't help getting fond of him. He told us he loves Meg, but he wants to have a comfortable home before he asks her to marry him. Besides, Meg is young, and I need to see for myself what her feelings are for him. She'll see those handsome eyes, and then it will be all up with her," Joe grumbled. "She likes brown eyes, and doesn't think John as ugly name, and she'll go and fall in love, and there's an end of peace and fun and cozy times together. I see it all. Brooke will carry her off and make a hole in the family and break my heart. Why weren't we all boys? Then there wouldn't be any bother." Joan leaned her chin on her knees sadly. Miss March said, "Joe, it is natural you should all go to homes of your own in time. But I do want to keep my girls as long as I can. Your father and I have agreed that Meg shall not be engaged nor married before 20. If she and John love one another, they can wait." "Wouldn't you rather have her marry a rich man?" asked Joe. Joe angrily pulling her hair out. "I would like John to be firmly established in some good business before they are married, but I also know how much genuine happiness can be found in a plain little house." "Well, I hate to see things going all crisscross and getting snarled up," said Joe. "I wish we could keep them growing up, but buds turn into roses and kittens into cats." "What's that about cats?" asked Meg. She crept into the room with a letter to father in her hand. "Only one of my stupid speeches. I'm going to bed," said Joe. Miss March glanced over Meg's letter to father. "It's beautifully written. Please add that I send my love to John." And Miss March, as she gave it back. "Do you call him John?" asked Meg, smiling. "Yes, he has been like a son to us, and we are very fond of him," replied Miss March. She looked carefully at her daughter. I'm glad of that, for he is so lonely. Good night, Mother, said Meg. The kiss her mother gave her was very tender. As she went away, Miss March said, "She does not know if she loves John yet, but will soon." Chapter 18. Father's Little Women. The peaceful weeks that followed were like sunshine after a storm. Miss March began to write of returning early in the new year. Beth was soon able to lie on the study sofa all day. She was able to play with her cats and dolls. Jo took her for a daily walk around the house. Meg cheerfully burned her white hands cooking. Amy celebrated her return by giving away many of her treasures. Several days of mild weather led to a wonderful Christmas day. Mr. March wrote that he would soon be with them, and Beth felt especially well that morning. "I'm so full of happiness. If Sonia was here, that would be the last drop I could hold," said Beth. "So am I," added Jo. "I'm sure I am," cried Amy. "Of course I am," cried Meg. Now and then things do happen, like in a storybook. Half an hour after everyone had said they were so happy they could only hold one drop more, the drop came. Larry opened the parlor door and popped his head in very quietly. He might as well have turned a somersault and whooped. His face was full of excitement, and everyone jumped up. He said, "Here's another Christmas present for the March family." In Laurie's place stood Mr. March, leaning on Mr. Brooke. He tried to say something and couldn't. Of course, there was a stampede. For several minutes, everybody seemed to lose their wits. Mr. March became lost in the embrace of 4 pairs of loving arms. Jo nearly fainted. Mr. Brooke kissed Meg, entirely by mistake, of course. Amy tumbled over a stool and hugged and cried over her father's boots. Miss March was the first to recover herself. She said, "Hush! Remember Beth!" But it was too late. The study door flew open. Beth ran straight into her father's arms, and then their full hearts overflowed. Remember, we haven't seen him in quite some time. He's been away at war, and he was sick, and Beth was sick, and it's Christmas. There never was such a Christmas dinner as the one they had that day. A plump turkey, plum pudding, and all the fixings. Mr. Lawrence said his grandson dined with them as well as Mr. Brooke. Jo frowned at this, which means delivery. Beth and her father sat in 2 easy chairs at the head of the table. They drank toast, told stories, sang songs, and had a very good time. After the guests left, the happy family sat together around the fire. Mr. March took little Beth in his lap, looked with pride on his girls, and said, "I have discovered many things today." "Oh, tell us what they are," cried Meg. "Here's one." He picked up Meg's hand. "I remember when his hand was white and smooth, and he wanted to keep it that way. It was very pretty then, but to me it is much prettier now. You have a hard palm and pricked fingers from much work, and in these scars and scratches I see a little history. Meg, my dear, I'm proud to shake this good, hard-working little hand." "What about Jo? Please say something nice. She has tried so hard and been so very, very good to me," said Beth in her father's ear. He laughed and looked across at the tall girl. "In spite of the new short hair, I don't see the son Jo whom I left a year ago," said Mr. March. "I see a young lady. Her face is rather thin and pale, but I like to look at it. It is gentler. She moves quietly and takes care of a certain little sister in a motherly way that delights me. I rather miss my wild girl, but if I get a strong, helpful, sweet woman in her place, I shall feel quite satisfied." "Now it's Beth's turn," said Amy, longing for her turn, but ready to wait. "There's so little of her, I'm afraid to say much, for fear she will slip away altogether. Though she is not so shy as she used to be," began her father cheerfully. Remembering how nearly he had lost her, he held her close. "I've got you safe, my Beth, and I'll keep you so, please God." He looked down at Amy, who sat at his feet, and said, "I saw that Amy ran errands for her mother all afternoon. She has waited on everyone with patience and good humor. She does not complain much, and she has not even mentioned a very pretty ring that she wears. She has learned to think of other people more and of herself less. There's no pictures on this page. Oh, that's why here's the picture. Father talking about home his girls. Beth perked up and smiled broadly. "What are you thinking of, Beth?" asked Joe. "It's singing time now, and I want to be in my old place," Beth said softly. "I've put music to the poem Father likes. It is the song of the shepherd boy." So sitting at the dear little piano, Beth softly touched the keys, and in a sweet voice that had never thought they would hear again, she sang a lovely hymn. Chapter 19, last chapter. The year closes. Mother and daughters hovered around Mr. March the next day as he sat propped up in a big chair by Beth's sofa. Their happiness seemed complete, but something seemed to be in the air. Mr. and Miss March looked at one another nervously. They watched Meg, who was absent-minded, shy, and silent. She jumped whenever the bell rang and blushed when John Brooks' name was mentioned. Laurie came by in the afternoon. Seeing Meg at the window, he fell down on one knee in the snow, beat his chest, tore at his hair, and clasped his hands together. "When does the goose mean... What?" Let me try it again. "What does the goose mean by that?" said Meg, laughing. "He's showing you how your John will act," answered Joe miserably. "Don't say my John. It isn't proper or true, Joe. I've told you I don't care much about him. There isn't to be anything said." "But something has been said. I see it, and so does Mother. You are not like your old self a bit, and seem ever so far away from me. I do wish it was all settled, but if you need to do it, have it over quickly," said Joe. "I can't say anything till he speaks, and he won't, because Father said I was too young," began Meg. She smiled in a way that suggested she did not quite agree with her father. "If he did speak, what would you say?" "I've planned it all. I will calmly say, 'Thank you, Mr. Brooke, you are very kind, but I agree with Father that I am too young.'" A sudden step in the hall made Meg fly into her chair and began to sew as if her life depended on it. "Good afternoon, Miss Joe. I came to get my umbrella. I mean, to see how your father is today," said Mr. Brooke nervously. There's Laurie pretending to be Meg's lover. "It's very well, thank you. He's in the umbrella stand. I'll get him. Until the umbrella, you are here." And having juggled her father and the umbrella together, Joe left the room to give Meg a chance to make her speech. But the instant Joe vanished, Meg murmured, "Mother will like to see you. I'll call her." "Don't go. Are you afraid of me, Margaret?" John asked. Meg blushed up to the little curls on her forehead, for he had only called her Miss Margaret before. Then she put out her hand and said, "How can I be afraid when you have been so kind to Father? I only wish I could thank you for it." "Shall I tell you how?" said Mr. Brooke, looking at Meg with so much love that her heart began to flutter. "I only want you to know if you care for me a little, Meg, I love you so much." This was the moment for her speech, but Meg forgot every word of it and answered, "I don't know." He pressed her hand gently and said, "Well, will you try and find out? I want to know so much." Just at that moment, Aunt March came hobbling in. Mr. Brooke vanished into the study. "Bless me, what's all this?" cried the old lady. Was Beth talking very nervously. "It's Father's friend. I'm so surprised to see you," stammered Meg. "What is Father's friend saying to make you blush so?" returned Aunt March, sitting down. "Mr. Brooke came for his umbrella," began Meg. "Brooke? The boy's tutor? Ah, I understand now," cried Aunt March, looking shocked. "Do you mean to marry this man? If you do, not one penny of my money ever goes to you." Now, if Aunt March had begged Meg to accept John Brooke, Meg probably would have declared she couldn't think of it. But when ordered not to like him, Meg immediately made up her mind that she would. I shall marry whom I please, Aunt March. You can leave your money to anyone you like. Now, Meg, my dear, you ought to marry rich to help your family. I thought you had more sense. John is good and wise. He's got heaps of talent. He's willing to work, and he's so brave, said Meg. He knows you have rich relatives, child. That's why he likes you. Aunt March, how dare you say such a thing? My John wouldn't marry for money any more than I would. I'm not afraid of being poor. Well, I wash my hands of the whole affair. Don't expect anything from me when you are married. I'm done with you forever. Slamming the door in Meg's face, Aunt March left. Meg did not know whether to laugh or cry. Before she could make up her mind, she was embraced by Mr. Brooke. I couldn't help hearing, Meg. Thank you for defending me. You do care for me a little. What a mean old aunt. She's a big old brat, if you ask me. I didn't know how much to tell Aunt March. I didn't know how much till Aunt March said those things about you, began Meg. May I stay and be happy, dear? Yes, John, said Meg. 15 minutes later, Joe came softly down the stairs. At the door she saw something that stopped her. Her mouth was nearly as wide as her eyes. There was Mr. Brooke, the enemy, sitting on the sofa with Meg upon his knee. Joe gave a short gasp. Mr. Brooke laughed and said, Sister Joe, congratulate us. Joe vanished without a word. She cried as she told the awful news to Beth and Amy. The little girls, however, thought it was a wonderful event, and Joe got little comfort from them. Mr. and Miss March went to the parlor to talk with the happy couple. Mr. Brooke asked for Meg's hand in marriage, and they agreed to a wedding in 3 years, when Meg would be 20. Mr. Brooke proudly took Meg into supper that evening. They both looked so happy that Joe didn't have the heart to be jealous. No one ate much, but everyone looked very happy. The old one seemed to be brightening up amazingly when the first romance of the family began there. Oh dear, so I guess she is marrying him after all. Joe's going to be so mad. You can't say nothing pleasant ever happens now, can you, Meg? Said Amy. No, I'm sure I can't. So much has happened since I said that, answered Meg. Miss March said, This has been a full year of events, but it ends well after all. Old Mr. Lawrence and his grandson came by. Rory came prancing and bearing a great bridal-looking bouquet. He was invited to the wedding on the spot. I'll come if I'm at the ends of the earth for all sight of Joe's face. It'll long be worth a long journey. Joe, what's the matter? Asked Rory, following her into a corner of the parlor. You can't know how hard it is for me to give up Meg. I've lost my dearest friend. You've got me anyhow. I'll stand by you all the days of my life, said and Rory meant what he said. Don't be sad. Meg is happy. I shall be through college before long, and then we'll go to Europe on some nice trip. There's no knowing what may happen in 3 years, said Joe. That's true. Don't you wish you could see where we shall be then? I do, returned Rory. Oh, what a nice boy. He's always cheering Joe up. He's a good friend, right? Joe's eyes went slowly around the room, brightening as they looked. Father and mother sat together quietly, reliving a romance which began some 20 years ago. Amy was drawing the lovebirds who sat apart in a beautiful world of their own. Beth lay on her sofa, talking cheerily with old Mr. Lawrence. Joe lounged in her favorite seat. Rory, leaning on the back of her chair, smiled at her in the long mirror which reflected them both. I think not, for I might see something sad, said Joe. Everyone looks so happy now. I don't believe they could be much improved. And so the curtain falls for now upon Meg, Joe, Beth, and Amy in the first act of the story called Little Women. The end. Well, I'm glad Beth got better. I'm glad Meg found love, and I'm glad that their dad came home, Mr. March. And all seems to be well, and Joe has a good friend in Rory. Maybe she'll grow up and marry him. You gotta read the rest of the story if you get a chance one day. I hope you like it. Alexia will be reading another book. I'm going to do a shorter one for the little kids, and then we'll get into another chapter book very soon, in the beginning of the new year. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks for listening to the book, and I will see you all next time. Love and light.